I'm reviewing MaXXXine. MaXXXine is the newest horror suspense from Ty West and A24, and it is the third in the X series trilogy. The other two films are Pearl and X, or X and Pearl, considering how they came out. It is a direct sequel, well, like 6 or 7 years after X, and it is in theaters right now. It was created and directed by Ty West. It stars Mia Goth, Elizabeth Debicki, and Michelle Monaghan. It also has Kevin Bacon in it. I'm gonna keep this review as spoiler-free as possible, so I won't ruin the film for you if you do decide to see it. And I think most of you out there will decide to see this film. Maxine Minx is back, and she still has her sights set on Hollywood. And this time, it is 1985 after the events of X. She's trying to branch out from her typical films that she does, and luckily has the chance to audition for a new horror film called The Puritan No. 2. During this time, Hollywood is being targeted by the Night Stalker, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with the Night Stalker. So needless to say, the streets were not safe. There was also some satanic panic happening around that time. So horror movies, you know, were maybe targets of that somewhat. So while doing her previous films, maybe horror is a step up, you know? Lots of people have got their start in horror films. Horror films are fabulous. I love acting in horror films. It's one of my favorite things in the world because they're fun, they're free, you can and you get bloody, and it's just exciting. By now, I am sure you are very, very familiar with the X trilogy. I'm sure most of you have seen Pearl and X, and they are both on streaming services. And now we finally have its conclusion. If you haven't seen X and Pearl, I highly recommend you check those out. However, I did go to the theater with someone who has not seen those films, and they loved MaXXXine. So that's a ringing endorsement. There was exposition throughout the way, but let me tell you, this is the way exposition should be done. Nothing was vomited. It was just little bits dropped here and there that gave you enough to put the pieces together to understand where MaXXXine has come from, where she's been, and obviously we know where she is now and where she's going. This is such an interesting series because each film has their own feel. And of course, they're based in different decades, but they do feel connected and they all work together as this trilogy. I kind of feel like there's something for everyone. I think that most people will enjoy one of the three films more than the other. So how is MaXXXine? I'm just gonna come out and say it. This is actually my favorite in the series. When the film starts out, it does such a phenomenal job of making you really feel like this is probably what Hollywood was like in 1985. All I kept thinking when I was watching this front part was like, man, I would love to have seen Hollywood in 1985. Seems kind of crazy, kind of wild. The cinematography in this is magical. Each shot is clearly thought out. Everything is purposeful. Everything pushes the story forward. There feels like there's nothing in this that is extra or fluff, and that's pretty amazing. That in conjunction with the editing, oh my gosh. There is something about the use of editing and then how they actually have some flashbacks and things throughout that really, really worked. The story is awesome. I loved the characters. I loved discovering everything. I became so wrapped up in the character of MaXXXine and so invested in her story that honestly, I didn't even care so much about the horror elements of this film, and that is shocking. I wanted to know what was gonna happen to MaXXXine and where she was gonna go, where she was gonna end up, and what was gonna happen to her. And so I'm thankful that Ty West delivered. As far as the story goes, you'll figure it out. I figured it out in the beginning of this film. I knew exactly what was happening, so will you. Trust me, you'll figure it out. It's telegraphed, but I didn't mind it being telegraphed. So there's not a huge mystery here. I mean, maybe it will be for some of you, but I think most of you are gonna figure this out really quickly. And I love the way these characters are written. I think sometimes characters are so wishy-washy. I love the assertiveness of many of Ty West's characters that he writes. They know what they want and they go for it. And that's the way it is. And don't stand in their way. And I find that very compelling. I'm really drawn to those types of characters. Mia Goth is absolutely perfect in this role. She killed it. I love her in MaXXXine even more than I loved her in X. Giancarlo Esposito plays her entertainment attorney, and he always gives a great performance. Come on. And I love Michelle Monaghan, and I think she did a fantastic job here. Everybody did, y'all. This film is definitely a hyper life film. Unlike X, that felt more grounded and more of like a 70s slasher, this film definitely plays into the 80s, and it is more over the top. Like I said, the three films work together, but they feel period to each decade. It doesn't go campy and it doesn't go grindhouse, but it comes to the line of those. Based on that, I think that this film may not appeal to some people. A hyper exaggerated version of authentic for 1985. That's probably the best way that I could describe it. The music in this film, oh my gosh. It had me kind of dancing in my seat, I'm not gonna lie. I really loved the 80s music that they had in this. This film does have some phenomenal gore. There's not too much gore, just some here or there, but what is done well. Some of it's just flashes, some of it's pretty quick. There are so many Easter eggs in this film as well, to not only other horror films, but to the other two films as well. Little alligator reference. There's also a lot of comedy in this film. I mean, someone does some stuff with the SAG card that I found particularly humorous. And the cops, they're a little ridiculous, but funny, and I really enjoyed them. Also, Kevin Bacon is hilarious as this smarmy, like, private investigator. Hilarious and awful. This is over the top. Okay, so it's all this hyper life. It's over the top. It's a little bit more. It's exaggerated. It's extra. And then when it gets to the end, it really goes off the rails. And some people are not gonna like that. It was very surreal. And yeah, it is slightly comical, but I felt like it worked with the film. I felt like this was the film that it was supposed to be. This wasn't meant to be real life. This was a film for the decades. Just like the other films were films for the decades. I was captivated by this film. I feel like this film was absolutely the icing on the cake. I would love to see more in this world of MaXXXine. I am so thrilled that I got to see it early and that I went to the theater to see it because I was not disappointed. So many times I've been disappointed with horror films recently, and this was not a disappointment at all. It exceeded my expectations. I highly, highly recommend seeing this film, and if you can, I recommend seeing this film in the theater. Have you seen X and Pearl? Do you plan on seeing MaXXXine? How do you feel about Ty West's X trilogy? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, I really do hope that you have the most amazing day, my spooky darlings. I want to give a big, huge thank you to my Patreon members. I really appreciate your support and you just being here with me on this journey. Chris Miziktino, Jimmy Horror, Eddie, Janie McLaren, Jose Reyes, Bill Smith, Jim Kemmerling, Mickey B, and Deal Demon. This is absolutely gonna be in my top 10. I'm having a very difficult time now. I've got Late Night with the Devil, Abigail, The First Omen, and MaXXXine. This is gonna be a rough one. Not finding 10 films, but determining which order I'm going to put them in.